is up, guys? I'm Evan and you guys are watching Auto Handler TV. It's been 10 days. I lied. I've really been trying to get one upload a week going on, but a lot of my plans got foiled over the last week or so. Pat's Acres actually ended up getting completely flooded, which that actually does happen often here. So, you know, no major damage has been done to the track, but they canceled their event and thus I wasn't able to go drifting last weekend like I had planned. But I still want to make an upload, and there was something that I actually planned on doing that I haven't gotten around to doing yet, which is just a basic Q&A, because up until the last video, I hadn't really gotten to communicate with you guys very much because I've been hurt and everything, and I thought there'd be some questions. And yeah, you guys sent me a bunch of really awesome questions. So we're just gonna dive in and do a Q&A and see where it goes. So I hope you guys are having an awesome weekend. The sun is shining, I cannot complain. It is a far cry from the last video when it was snowy and disgusting. And so I'm really excited to be down here at the shop, and we'll just knock out some questions and you know, maybe learn a little bit about each other or something like that. So anyway, so Jams Drift asks, what's your biggest advice for someone trying to grow their brand on social media / YouTube? Now, I'm no expert when it comes to YouTube. I have 2,000 subscribers, so I might not be the most qualified person to answer this question. As far as growing your brand on social media, I think that there's gonna be a couple of things that you really want to identify before you even start to work toward growth. And the first thing is that, are you already doing what you want to be doing with your brand? I get this question a lot. I want to do this or that, or I want to make art or design cars or start a t-shirt company or whatever. And the first question that I always ask somebody is, well, are you already making that art? Are you already making t-shirts, etc.? And if they say no, then the first thing that I say, which is a total buzzkill, is this might not be cut out for you. Most people that want to get passionate about something and start to grow a art project or a brand or a company, they do so because they're already doing it without any recognition, without any social media numbers. And so the number one thing to double check with yourself on is, do you have a vested interest in what you're doing? Like, would you do it if nobody else was watching? And if you are actually doing that, I would say that is the best first step to getting going on anything, because you're not gonna get burnt out on it and you're not gonna feel like you're wasting your time. It takes a long time to grow a brand, and it takes a lot of dedication and hard work. And honestly, the best thing that you can do is just stick to your guns and continue to just produce whatever it is that you want to produce, and you wanna try to connect with a target market of some kind. So if you want to sell cars or design shirts or whatever it may be, make sure that what you're creating is getting into the hands of the people that want to see it or that would be interested in it. And a good way of doing that is networking. Reach out to other brands that are in a similar vein, do collab merchandise, try to do some content creation together, and then it's just basically a slow climb. To start from scratch is a really it can be a daunting task, and it can take years. It's a lot harder to get from 1,000 followers to 10,000 than it is to get from 10,000 to 50,000. And it's even harder to get from 10,000 to 50,000 than it is to get from 50,000 to 100,000. And the growth can be basically exponential, but just stick to your guns. Don't fall into just jumping on whatever is trending in social media to try to get this virality within your content that's not going to be repeatable, because what's going to happen is that you're going to end up getting that one video that really catapults you, and maybe it's not even exactly what you try to make or what you're all about, but you're going to be chasing that high for the rest of your career. You're going to be making compromises to your art or to what you do with your company in order to get back on that hype train and just get views. And that's gonna leave you feeling very dissatisfied if you never reach that same level. So my best advice to you is to just do what you feel that you do, and people that feel it will follow and they will find you. It can take a while, but just stick to it. Next question. Spire1 asks, which E36 is best? Coupe, sedan, compact, or touring? That's a pretty easy one for me. I'm gonna say sedan, 100%. It's more practical, it's stiffer, it has more headroom. Little known fact, the E36 sedan roofline is about 1 inch higher than the coupe, which makes it more comfortable to ride in. It also allows more room for a helmet in the event of a motorsports application. I really think that with the E36 chassis, the styling of the chassis itself lends itself to having 4 doors. Now, I love coupes. I love them all actually, but if I had to choose one, it would be the sedan. The touring is super awesome as well, but I'm gonna stick with sedan. Sedan is best. Okay, Mitcherexo asked, what first guided your interest into drifting over other motorsport? That's a pretty easy question to answer for me. There's a lot of freedom of expression within drifting. You can build your car how you want, you can drive it where you want, there's no spec rules. In fact, individuality within drifting is encouraged. And it's also not a ranked sport that has a governing body that not only makes it cost prohibitive, but also it takes some of the fun and the wild nature out of it. If you have to spend 30 grand on a spec Miata and then you go race a bunch of cars that are exactly the same as that car, and you have to participate in a series just in order to get some track time. Whereas with drifting, it's 100% an individualistic sport, I guess you would say. You get to build your car the way you want, you get to put the parts on it you want, you get to make it look the way that you want to make it look, and then you get to go drive it how you want. And it's really fun to me to do that. One of the biggest things that actually allured me to drifting in general was the whole idea about styling out a car to your own specific personal style and then going and testing that against yourself on track, against other drivers on track, and to grow your skill set within the car that you build as this like sort of extension of self. Like it's like a artistic representation of who you are in a lot of ways. And I feel like a lot of that personalized identity and some of that idealism that falls within drifting kind of gets lost in other motorsports when you have to follow a bunch of rules and there's a really narrow path by which you can actually access track time and motorsports in general. TB Mondial asks, can you show some of the music you did/do? Yeah, I totally can. I will link a FM radio mix that I did back in like 2015 in the comments of this video. So for those of you that don't know me that well, I actually cut my teeth doing content creation in the music industry. I used to do photography and videography for a lot of EDM DJs and rappers and stuff like that. And I even was working as a club DJ and a photographer and graphic designer for some local clubs here in Oregon for a couple of years. It was an amazing time. And I will say this, DJing a packed club is the only thing that I've done creatively that can compare to building drift cars and driving them. It was a really hard thing for me to throw in the towel doing DJ stuff, but back in about 2014, the DJing stuff was really taking off, the FC stuff was really taking off, and I felt like I was not going to succeed at one or the other unless I committed entirely to one or the other. And honestly, when it comes to nightlife culture, it's so over-sexualized and there's drug use involved and after parties and you're out at 4 o'clock in the morning every weekend. And I'd been doing that for a couple of years. And when I looked at motorsports and drifting, I just kind of thought it to be a more wholesome activity. And I kind of envisioned the next 5 to 7 years of my life approaching age 30. And I just didn't really want to end up being like a small-time, washed-up club DJ and promoter at age 30 that's still going to all these parties and stuff like that, when I could apply myself into doing stuff with motorsports, which requires more money, so people are more responsible, they keep their jobs, they're not as opportunistic, and there's, you know, drugs and driving cars doesn't really mix together very well, so you don't deal with a lot of weird druggy people and stuff like that like you do in the music industry. And as hard as it is for me to say it, I definitely think that I made the right decision. So if you want to hear some old stuff from back in the day, check the comments, I got you. Race Course Stuff asked, besides drifting, what other motorsports have you done or want to do? To be completely honest, I get distracted really easily, but there's one thing that I've really, really wanted to do, and that's get involved in the overland / off-road / rock crawling community. being where we live, here in Oregon, it is just such a beautiful place to be, and I really feel like I'm selling myself short in terms of overall life enjoyment by not having a vehicle to go take off in the rocks and go camping in and stuff like that. Now would be a wonderful time to tell you guys that unfortunately I sold the Tacoma. I catfished you guys with that entire truck. I actually went and washed that thing for the first time, and he said it had some minor rust issues, which I was okay with. I'll show you some photos of the exterior rust that it had. I got a great deal. But what he didn't tell me was that the entire frame of the Tacoma was rotten. And I actually, when I went to wash it, I was poking holes in the frame of the truck with a pressure washer. And so I actually took the high road. I relisted the truck at an $1,800 loss on Facebook Marketplace. And a really cool guy who likes to do restoration work came down and he bought the truck from me. Full disclosure, he knew exactly what was wrong with it. And he ended up taking it, and I ended up having to eat that loss. And so that sucks, but I'm still on the hunt for an off-road truck, and I am going to get out next summer at the very latest and start doing some off-road stuff. So if any of you guys are interested in doing that with me, please shoot me a message, hit me up on Instagram, and let's go explore. _Kyle asked, when will you answer me about shipping to Down Under MF? I have ran a few different shipping quotes for Australia and New Zealand, and it is looking like to ship a set of overs down over there, it's gonna be around $700 to $1,000 airmail. So if that's something that you're interested in doing, we can make it happen. I know it's a bitter pill to swallow to spend more on the shipping than you did on the product. So Kyle, let me know, man. We can make it happen. Drift A4 asks, if you had to get a drift car that isn't a BMW, what would it be? So that's kind of a tough question. There's a lot of them that are really good. One car that I've always wanted to drift is a Cadillac CTS-V. I love big bodies. That thing is like LS motor, 6-speed Tremec, like there we go, like perfect. However, if it was like my only drift car, I feel like it would be a little bit too big and kind of cumbersome to be the style of car that I would want to have as my primary drift car. Another thing that I've always wanted to do is do like a turbo S52, S13. Like I love S13 coupes. They're freaking amazing cars. I'm not a huge fan of Nissan as a brand, but those really get me. And then there's a number of Japanese cars that I would like to drift, like a Laurel or a JZX of some kind. But I'm actually left-handed and I hate right-hand drive. I hate it because I've grown up being left-handed. My left hand stays on the steering wheel, my dominant hand, my right hand shifts. And if I shift all of that over to the right side of the car, now my non-dominant hand is on the steering wheel and my dominant hand is on the shifter, and it just feels completely wrong. So maybe a left-hand drive Laurel or a left-hand drive JZX 100, just full race car, just cut the whole interior out and just move everything over. That might be something that I'd be really interested in doing. But with as many sick BMWs as there are to build, there are still dozens that I would love to own, and I just don't see myself transitioning out of that manufacturer for a long time, maybe ever. So, hate to disappoint. Fernando Guzman asks, how much do you charge to install your wide body? Now, that's a really good question. It really depends on what car it is, how many parts you want me to install, or if you want them painted. All of that is going to determine the price. I would say to do like a basic, like cut radius, weld the rear tubs, cut the front fenders, mount the parts not painted. I'd probably do it for around $1,200 to $1,500, and that would have seam sealed welded rear tubs and stuff like that. I have a lot of experience chopping up cars, and I'm able to do a really clean job. Now, if it's a sedan, it's a little bit more expensive. If you want the parts painted, it's going to be a little bit more expensive. Skirts, rear bumper cover, all that's going to add a little bit to the cost, but $1,200 to $1,500 is a pretty good baseline for that. Divis asks, if you could pick one moment from your past to relive again, what would it be? Man, that is a good question. There's been many, many moments. Man, so I know that I touched base on this in other videos, but for about 6 years, from 18 to 24, I actually spent like most of my life during that period living out of a backpack, hitchhiking, hopping freight trains, and just traveling around the United States. basically without a dime to my name. And we had this belief that if we did not ask anyone for anything and we treated people well, that the fabric of life, as the unfolding tapestry of existence and reality would just sort of roll a red carpet upon us, and we would have good fortune and we would be able to get through life. And to be completely honest, it worked like a charm. I mean, we really had a ton of fun, and I got to see some amazing things, and we had some really, really hard times during that time, me and my buddies. But there was this one time when we were riding a freight train through the redwood forest from Oregon to Northern California, and it was like 7 o'clock in the morning and there was not a cloud in the sky. And we had been hiding for most of the trip because you don't want to get caught by the train staff and stuff, the conductors and whatnot. And you still have to hide in semi-trailers or other parts of cars and stuff. And for a couple of hours that morning, we decided that we didn't care whether we got caught or not, and we actually went out and we climbed up on the roof of the semi-trailer, and we sat there hanging our feet off the edge of the car. And as we were being whisked through the redwood forest, miles from any road, because these train tracks don't always follow the highway, so we're just in an undiscovered part of the redwood forest that would be really hard to access by car. I'll probably never see it again, and those moments were pretty awesome. I wouldn't mind seeing that again. So that's just one of many, and I can make a million videos about things I did when I was on the road, and if you guys want to see that, just let me know in the comments and we could dive way into that. And it was really, really a fun experience, so let me know. King Kilburn asks, do you plan to turn Auto Handler into something like RWB with bespoke customer cars featuring your parts? Now, little known fact, I'm already kind of doing that a little bit. It's not a cheap thing to do because the parts aren't cheap and the labor isn't cheap. So I don't have a bunch of customers banging down my door to get custom cars built. But I have built one for my buddy Mike, the Mike Winklepleck on Instagram. I will, here's a couple photos of the car. It's a really, really cool car. It looked absolutely amazing. He did our full parts package with the wing and everything. So if anybody wants me to do their E36, or even like Mike did, he bought his E36 from us and then we put all the parts on it and he just got to pick up this super awesome finished vehicle that he gets to enjoy. I'd love to, but frankly, you know, when the drift scene and in the E36 world, people don't really throw money around the same way they do with Porsche 911s. You know, it's not an easy sell to tell someone that their $7,000 328 is going to be $10,000 more if they do full paint matched aero and a full build on it. And so it's not something that I expect to do like full time or a ton of, but I will do it and I'm happy to do it. I absolutely love styling out cars. And if you're interested, let me know because we can make it happen. Porter Taylor asks, what are the things you absolutely bring to a drift day? Getting ready for my first day. I actually pack pretty light. I bring a couple of wood blocks to get a jack underneath my diff to change my tires. I bring my extra tires. I bring a couple of electric impacts, and then I bring a basic mechanics toolkit. The one that I got from Gear Wrench is absolutely amazing for the price. It's like 250 bucks. And it has ratcheting wrenches. It has a full set of metric sockets. It has a full set of Allen wrenches. And that, along with a few like brute force tools like pliers, hammers, pry bars, shit like that, that can pretty much fix anything on a drift car if it's not too insane. My car is not some super hot-blooded, high horsepower drift car where I have to carry around spare differentials and axles and crap like that. And it's a pretty common car, so it's like if I break an axle, sometimes I'll bring an axle if I have one. But in the event that I don't have an axle, I can usually talk to somebody in the pits and they'll have a lead on an axle or even have one that I can buy there at the track. And I know it's probably not the most responsible thing to like depend on the people around you for things, but I just tend to pack light, and I always pack a little bit more if I'm traveling further. It's like if I go to a local event in Portland or at Spirit Peaks, worst case scenario, you know, I'm an hour away from my house or from here, and so I tend to pack pretty light. So I hope that helps. Skirt Vert asks, what's the best way to get your media out there if you have no following yet? Well, This might sound a little bit daunting, but doing pro bono work for people who do have a following is a really good way to get to know the community and to get your foot in the door within a subculture. So for example, if you came up to me at a drift event and you said, hey, I'm gonna go film you for a couple of laps and cut a video up for you, would you mind sharing it when I finish it up? I'm gonna say, well, of course I will, you know, thank you so much. I tend to tip my photographers, so I'd probably send you some money. But you know, don't expect that. But if you do want to do that, then basically what happens is when you post it to your social media, then the person that does have a following, like me or a different notable driver or a company that you're working with or whatever, they'll share it. And then the people that take interest in your creative work will follow you personally. And if you do that enough times, you'll start to grow actual formidable, honest following behind your creative work. And so I'd say that's a good place to start. Juwash asks, do you harbor any negative feelings toward your E36 that tried to kill you? Man, that is a good question. I'm gonna tell you guys, I had some really weird PTSD about the E36 when I first got out of the hospital. In fact, when I came down here for the first time, I was in a wheelchair, and luckily Tim and Erica and my whole team had moved my car back into the shop, obviously, while I was in the hospital. And when I actually saw it in real life for the first time, I didn't even want to get in front of it because I felt like it was gonna crank over and drive over me a second time. And I know that's like the most asinine, unrealistic, absurd thing to think, but honestly, I had this weird fear of the car for a little bit. And the first time that I had to get under it, it scared the living crap out of me, and it still does a little bit. Do I have any negative feelings toward the car itself? No, I have no resentment toward the car, but I do have a bunch of really weird PTSD related fears about the car. And I've since gotten over it a little bit because I've gone and taken it out drifting. I've street driven it a bunch, and I kind of re-acclimatized myself, re-familiarized myself. So I no longer feel that it's this type of object that I need to be on high alert around and stuff, if that makes sense. But it changed my relationship with the car permanently. And I'm not gonna part it out or scrap it or whatever. I'm just gonna, you know, tame the beast a second time, I guess you could say, and just keep driving it and enjoying it. But yeah, there was definitely some weirdness there when I first saw the car. Lost on My Beach asks, why the V8 in the white car, and would you swap it again? That car is starting to remind me of the FC. That's funny because it reminds me of the FC a little bit as well. And why the V8? It's really plain and simple. It's easy to work on. Heat management is really awesome. The cars don't get hot very easily. They're cheap, they're incredibly well balanced, and you can get parts for them anywhere. And as much as I like to flex my cool stylish drift car in certain ways, like with its aesthetics and the wheels and stuff like that, I'm not the type of person that likes to spend tons of time under the hood. I do not have a bunch of polished parts underneath the hood of my car. Honestly, what I usually say is that a successful drift event for me is a drift event where I never have to open my hood, not one time. If I'm opening my hood, that generally means that something is wrong and I'm not able to drive. And so the LS1 works really well for that, or any LS platform engine. You don't deal with the vacuum line issues and coil packs and boost leaks and all that other stuff you do with JZs. They're way lighter and they're just really low maintenance. And so that's the number one allure for me. And as far as it being like the RX-7, yeah, I mean, that's kind of like my style, you know what I mean? That car, I'm gonna build the drift car that I like to build, and it always ends up being like this naturally aspirated V8 car with really cool styling, and I love white cars, and so I can see the similarities there. So who knows? It might just continue to get closer and closer to the RX-7 as time progresses. I don't know. Tangway_ said, new wheel plan for E36. When it comes to wheels, for me, I switch it up. I probably put 5 or 6 different sets of wheels on the E36 since I had it. Right now, it is on some broke boy style 32s because the wheels that I ordered are not going to be manufactured until February. I like to switch wheels up. They're like shoes. You don't want to wear the same pair of shoes every day for the rest of your life. And so I'm gonna continually change wheels. And another good thing about doing that is that Wheels kind of become a wear item in drifting. The longer that you have them, the higher the chances are of you destroying one, and then they lose their value. And so I kind of feel like it's almost like a gamble, like the longer that I have a set of wheels. And so what I'll typically do is that I will buy a set of wheels, I'll run them for 6 months, a year, maybe even a couple months, maybe even just one weekend. And if I can get them sold before I destroy a barrel or fuck them up super bad, then that's like a win-win, because wheels hold their value incredibly well if you buy authentic. And most of the time I can just sell them for exactly what I paid for them, and I just got to basically use them for free for that period of time. And so yeah, the wheels are gonna change. You're gonna see lots of wheels on my car. Great Media asks, are you looking for a set of helping hands at Auto Handler? I would drop everything to come work with you. Now, staffing Auto Handler has been something that I have really resisted, because it basically comes down to this. I don't want to pay someone a non-living wage. And if I did hire someone to work with me at Auto Handler, I would estimate that the minimum salary requirement for what would make me feel good is about $40,000 a year. And then you have to ask yourself, it begs the question, does that person's presence within the brand earn me more than $40,000 extra a year? Because if their presence is not making me at least $40,000 a year more profitable, then I'm actually losing money hiring that person, and it doesn't really make financial sense for me. So right now I'm operating at basically 95% capacity as far as what Erica and myself can handle. And I'm gonna stay right there until it really becomes an absolute force of necessity to get another employee on board. So eventually you might see me reach out asking for some hired help, but I wouldn't estimate it for at least another year or so. But keep your eyes out. So I Hate BMWs asks, why E36s? Man, they are just awesome cars, okay? They are so awesome. The styling is awesome. They drive awesome. They're easy to work on. The stock power plant is more than enough to go have fun at the drift track or to have spirited drives, and there's a potential to turbocharge the stock engine with just a gasket and studs and make a reliable 400 to 500 horsepower. The interiors are great, 90s, like cool, like old luxury interiors. I really enjoy the more upright position of the driver and the roof being higher than like an S13. Whenever I feel like I'm driving a Japanese car, I feel like the windshield is like right next to my face, because it doesn't like come straight up and down enough for my own personal preference. And overall, I just think that they're freaking sweet cars, man. Like, I will never ever stop driving E36s. I will drive them till the day that I die. I love them. I will always own one. I love making parts for them. I love the way they look. I love the way they drive. I am like 100% truly passionate about that chassis. I did not just get into this to make a quick buck. I love them. I can't even tell you guys how much I love them. They're my favorite car on the planet. That and E38 7 Series. If I only had one of each for the rest of my life, I would be a happy camper. So I would highly recommend you guys try one out and get one before they're getting too expensive, because for a while there, it was like the Wild West. You could buy 328s for $1,500, and it was just insane the amount of value you got. But now they're getting pushed up more into the 5 to 7 to 8K range. They're still the best car that you can buy for that amount of money. They will beat the brakes off of a 240SX with a KA in it, and it will cost you 1/3 the price to build it. So I'd really, really, really highly recommend that you go check out an E36 if you haven't already. All right, so I don't know how long this has been running. I feel like that is a good closer for this. Thank you guys so much for watching. As soon as Park drains itself out, we're gonna get the car out to the track. As far as what's been going on around here, I'm gearing up to buy a Land Cruiser. I actually listed the wagon and the Dakar M3 on my Instagram. Those cars are officially for sale, although I haven't actually done a for sale ad for them, but if you're interested, let me know. So that wraps it up, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'm gonna keep bringing you guys videos as often as I can. So I will see you guys in the next one. See you later.